This is where our story begins. While strolling through the town of Bassano, Italy, Giancarlo Crestani, sales director for Breton Engineering, is drawn to the striking yellow cover of a book by Oren Klaff. Pitch Anything. La presentazione perfetta. Act 1. The idea.
On December 3rd, 2019, a email came in and said, hey, we're in Italy, we want to talk to you, read the book, and we have a big industrial manufacturing firm and we need some help. As it turns out, Breton has developed an entire new version of their technology, exactly in sync for the changing industry of a $40, $50 billion domestic industry in the United States. And they announce it. Nobody takes any notice. So they immediately go, we didn't communicate it properly. And this is a job for Pitch Anything, Oren Klaff. It's not that the customers didn't understand the technology, weren't excited about the technology, didn't know how to use the technology. Inside of Hyundai, this division that does stone is buried 7 layers deep, and it's not important to the strategy of the company. They're not trying to own new markets and compete and take new space and move fast and break stuff because you think Hyundai could compete and box out LG and the other South Korean firms. So when you offer them a new technology, you're like, we like what we do. And therein came the opportunity. Because when you have an industry changing, consumer demands are changing, distributor demands are changing, you got regulatory headwinds, you got the government getting involved, you got lawsuits getting involved, you have other technologies coming into the market, and in general, the consumer aesthetic rising, there's just no chance you can stand still. As I started getting inside the numbers, as I started modeling it, I started to understand, yes, it's $165 million to do the whole thing all the way, but this particular technology is unique in that you can turn it on in stages and be producing, as we know now, revenue right away. So when I realized that, $10 million can do a lot of work here, getting revenue. $25 million turns on a big company. $50 million turns on an industry competitor, and $100 million owns the market. Brett knows it, I know it, and that's why we formed this partnership.
Act 2. The funding.
When you go somewhere and ask for money, you get an opinion. And when you go and ask for opinion, you get money. So I just went out and started talking to people. Is there any appetite for this? So I didn't pitch it. I just said, hey, I want to tell you what I'm working on, just to see if there's any appetite for something like this. So I talked to 15, 20 people. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Bring it by. I like it. And I've done this so much, I just got a instinct, like there's money for this deal. I don't know where it is, but I know there's capital interest other than my money for this deal. I'm on the way home from a meeting in LA. Sam calls me and says, come by for a workout. And he goes, what are you working on? I'm like, it's complicated. He goes, oh, well, tell me about it. I'm like, Sam, let's just work out. I don't want to, explain it. He's like, I understand complicated stuff. I like to know what you're working on. I take him through it, and I start getting the numbers. And Sam goes, I love it. I'm like, what do you mean you love it? He's like, I love it. Let's do it. He said, I'm going to get the guys together. We're going to go through it. And if we like it, we're going to fund it. And they all said, we're in. And so between my money and their money, $6 million popped out of nowhere. And we were on our way. I would show people the OK Stone story and pitch. And everybody loved it, but they didn't have the tools to analyze it that I did as an analyst, as a private equity, as an investor. So they loved it, but they didn't know why they loved it. They just knew in the pit of their stomach or in their mind, they liked me, they liked the deal, it was exciting, but I wanted to give people the tools to assess. That helped people understand this is the first time in OK Stone I get to be the best player in the best game in the world and have an advantage in that game. Once I start telling people about the deal, about the company, the floodgates are going to open. We needed somebody to take the tsunami of calls and people who wanted to be involved.
And so when he reached out and said, hey, I got this opportunity to come really learn how deal making in private equity and capital raising is done. Like, it's not just theory, like we're actually able to put it into practice. I was like, hey, let's do it. I never could imagine that we'd have 300 investors this fast. That's nuts. And so a lot of props to the investors for putting up with me. But I'll say, I signed on to work with Oren and his mission, which I think a lot of investors have. And I didn't really understand engineered stone quartz. Like, I was a finance guy. I didn't really click, it didn't click in my head until Oren and I went to KBIS, the largest kitchen bath convention in the world in downtown Las Vegas. And so when I'm walking through that KBIS with the lens of, you know, all my finance background, with knowing nothing, like this was just a few months in, knowing nothing about engineered stone quartz, what quartz is, how to make it, how to do, and to see how outdated I felt the industry was personally, that's where it fully hit the gas for me of like, this is an opportunity bigger than Oren's, bigger than myself dealing with investors. It's bigger than all of us here in the room watching this video or wherever you're seeing it. It's bigger than all of us. And we have an opportunity to really turn the pendulum just a little bit, which I think if we can get it started one way, everyone's gonna be chasing us.
Act 3, the people.
After myself and Sam and our colleagues put together the first $6 million and we started buying equipment and putting the plans together and started going to Italy more often, I understood like what we're doing here is not just a company and making money. We're touching the DNA of two cultures that work together, love each other, admire each other, but are very different. And I started understanding this is what Americans love about America, is the ability to make great things, going all the way back to the Apollo 11 and this effort to go to the moon. The things that we admire made the greatest are made in Italy. A 1956 Ferrari 166 mm, the fashion houses, the coffee machines and coffee, stone, brick, the poetry, the paintings, the things that we admire most about being made come from Italy. So these are two cultures that love working together and now can do something great again. That's when I got empowered to just keep this in the family. Instead of turning it over to some big private equity firm that just wants to scale it up, monetize it, turn it into a financial product, and kick it out the door, who cares what it is? This became the opportunity to build something great and give families the opportunity to participate. And once I saw that, I never looked back.
You know, with 300, there's all different types of people when you make up 300. And so it's been so fun for me to be able to latch on to different things that they like, expand my comfort zone, try new things. When somebody like Gary calls me, it's a lot different than when, you know, a huge advisor's calling me. It's different conversations, but it's really the same end goal. It's like, hey, we're putting money to work, and how do we best put it to work?
I have a bias for action. In other words, like I have something to do every minute of the day, and then I shut it down, go spend time with my family, and go to hockey. And then we came up with this notion of 15 of us, Nate, myself, the investors, would go to Italy and go visit the factory. Except for you show up in Italy and like your car's not ready and you don't know where the hotel is and your map isn't working and you're hungry and the restaurant that you plan to go to doesn't exist. And now you go to another restaurant and a wine comes out and a pizza comes out and you start having, well, I don't know, like conversation and a relationship and talking about life and family and things that matter, and everything's just pulled the handbrake, come to a screeching halt, and you start seeing people for the people they are and the family for the family they are, and you start to understand where their money comes from, what they want to do with their money, why they're here. And then we go visit the factory, and they are so appreciative of the chance to see what's really going on in the company. And now you're not even there with investors, you're just there with friends. And that's the experience of that this deal provides that you would never get. I don't want to be critical, but going to Chicago, Boston, Brooklyn, San Francisco, all cool places, but nothing like going to Venice, Italy.
Because of all of you showing up to the community calls, showing up to our investor updates, showing up in person to our investor conference, spending time with me when I fly to New York on a 2-week notice, say, hey, I'm gonna get together. We had 40 people show up on a 2-week notice, when at the time we had probably 200 investors. So many of you have traveled internationally to come here. That says a lot. And hopefully it should say a lot about the power our investment group has in terms of networking, community, the future of OK Stone, the future press that it's going to get when we really decide to go on the offense about some of the problems that are being faced within the current engineered stone market. Like, if you just think about it, the more you start to uncover, the more you start to see we're just in the early innings of exposure, of press, of really what we can provide to investors in terms of return on capital. That's what gets me out of bed, super excited, and really what we can do together as one.
Our story has clearly just begun.